elevate your life with this episode of Lifestyle and Success with Dr. S. Hey friends, Dr. S here. You know, one thing that I love about this show is that it shows anyone and everyone that regardless of what background you have, what different experiences you have had, and who you are, that you can obtain your level of success. I've been getting some really positive feedback from the business tips that you've been getting and the lifestyle hacks that I've been loving. And so I have to tell you, if you are feeling this community, to subscribe to the talk show and never miss a beat, head to lifestyleandsuccesswithdrs.com. And today's guest is coming up next. Have you ever wondered how to bootstrap your business to $1 million plus? If you have, you are going to love today's episode. So today's guest is Lillian Rafson, and on this episode, we are going to explore how to bootstrap your business to $6 million plus. She's also going to share with us how she got her first business credit account and how to launch a business inspired by your passion. So Lillian runs a travel business. And of course, I couldn't let her leave without giving us the lowdown on how to plan a stress-free vacation, since that is absolutely 100% what she does. So as we welcome Lillian on the show, let me just give you a little bit of background about her company. Lillian Rafson is the founder and CEO of Pack Up and Go, which is a surprise travel agency that encourages spontaneity, exploration, and adventure among American travelers. She launched this business when she was 23, guys, and I can't wait for her to share her story with us. Lillian, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
You have an incredible brand and you've created an incredible movement, and I'd love to know how you got started.
Yeah, I know, like you, I started my company really young. I know you were 24 when you started yours, and I was 23. And it goes back to my upbringing. I was really, really fortunate to grow up in a family that really valued travel. And so growing up, I was always exposed to travel opportunities. And I was lucky enough in college to study abroad for a full year. And I loved that experience. And any chance I got, I was taking weekend trips or, exploring new places. And I loved it. And I was living in New York, graduated from college, got a job at a startup in sales in New York. And I just wasn't that energized by it. I think my expectations were a little too high from the meaningfulness that job would give me. And so I felt a little disappointed, and I didn't know what I actually wanted to do at that point. So I went back to the one thing that's always brought me a lot of joy and helped me clear my mind, which is traveling. So I quit that job and decided just to take a couple of months to travel and figure out what I actually wanted to do with my life. And so I went backpacking around the eastern coast of Europe. So I went up the Baltic coast from Poland up to Estonia, and I knew nothing about this region, but I was completely blown away by it. And I was in Riga, Latvia, and I was in my hostel talking to other people who were staying there and asked how they ended up traveling to Latvia, sort of a random vacation destination. And there were two Dutch women in my hostel who were there on a surprise vacation. And it turned out that this concept already existed in Europe, and I had never heard of it. And I thought, this is the most fun idea. And it sort of dawned on me that, I'd made it all the way to Riga, Latvia, but I'd never been to Boston, Massachusetts, or Denver, Colorado. And I started reflecting on all of the traveling that I'd been lucky enough to do in my life and realized that it was mostly overseas. And I started thinking, why is it that as somebody who grew up in the States, do I not prioritize traveling around my own country and learning about other places in the US? It's so huge, and there are so many different places to see. And I just sort of ideated from there, and I did a quick search, and it didn't exist in the United States. And so I sent an email to my parents, and I said, I think I'm going to move back to Pittsburgh and start a surprise travel agency. And that's what I did.
And here you are. And
And
I
here we
know that
are.
there have been some twists and turns as you started launching that brand, building that brand, and I want to get into all of it. So, I mean, what did your parents say? What did you think you'd be doing when you grew up? Or what did they think you would be doing when you grew up?
That's a really great question. I should ask what they thought I was going to be. But funny enough, both of my parents own small businesses. So when I was growing up, my parents both had offices in the house. They were working all the time. And I always joke that when we went on vacation, the fax machine came with us. So, so I always was around entrepreneurship and I always knew that it was possible, but that it was always a lot of work. I knew that starting your own company didn't mean that you have complete flexibility and, it's a walk in the park. But when the idea came about, they were really receptive to it. And even though I never intended to be an entrepreneur growing up, when the idea happened, I was 23 and I thought, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work, I'll go get a job. But I might as well give it a shot. But funny enough, in high school, in middle school and high school, I definitely wanted to be an actress. And I even went to a performing arts high school for musical theater. And I realized pretty quickly I'm not cut out to be an actress. It wasn't for me. But so many of those skills from my performing arts background have been so helpful as an entrepreneur. So I'm really grateful that I have that experience, and I'm really grateful that I didn't pursue that path.
Totally. I mean, do you feel like the initial skills that you had that made you want to become an actress have helped with your confidence and talking about the company that you have created today?
Definitely. And especially now that our team is over 20 people, I think a lot of my role as a CEO is to communicate the vision and sort of steer the ship. And so much of that comes down to communication and public speaking and knowing how to engage a group of people. So it's been really, really helpful in that way.
Yes. Now you just said something really important, which is like a team of 20 plus people. So I already can imagine that there have been some hurdles getting that team together and really having your business run like a well-oiled machine. So what hurdles did you overcome as you were creating your company?
Yeah, so I'll talk about some hurdles before the pandemic because obviously that was a huge hurdle in the travel
Yeah.
industry.
The
But
elephant in the room.
yeah, we'll get to that later. But the biggest hurdle, and I wonder if you felt this too, since you were around the same age when you started your company. Um, I didn't have a ton of experience as an entrepreneur. I had no experience as an entrepreneur, no experience in the travel industry, and I really had no managerial experience. So there were a lot of hurdles related to that. There were a lot of very practical hurdles in terms of getting a credit limit that was reasonable for the company credit card as a 23-year-old with very little credit history. That was a really practical hurdle. But early on, just learning how to run a business as it's going was crazy. The company took off way faster than I thought it would, which is, amazing. But it meant that I was learning how to create an employment contract at the same time that I was learning how to deal with accounting issues at the same time that travelers are calling because their flight was canceled. So
Mm-hmm.
it felt like there were 25 things happening all at once, and I had no expertise in any of it. So even going back to the acting background, I think it was a lot of, fake it till you make it, the show must go on, all those tropes that go along with acting. That really is how it felt. It was, all right, well, I've gotten myself into this. I have to make it work. Customers are counting on me. And so it was a lot of learning on the fly. And then as the team continued to grow, a big hurdle that I'm still working through is learning to let go and release a little bit of control. I trust my team and I hire the people I hire because I trust them and I know that they'll do a great job. But especially when the company is your baby, it's really, really hard to relinquish control.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I can 100% relate to that. And it's so funny when you were talking about the credit issue, I was chuckling to myself because I can remember when I first went to the bank to open up a business bank account when I launched my school. And they looked at me and it was a local branch and they said, "Oh, well, what's going to be, your rough annual deposit? And I'm like, oh, roughly $3 million. And they're looking at me and I was like, I think I was turning 25 at the time. And they did not believe me. They said, all right, ma'am, well, we're going to just put your application aside and we're going to do a site visit and maybe we can continue the conversation at your
Oh,
actual site. And so I had no idea that that was not regular protocol. Like I was like, okay, no problem. This is the address. And we were just signing the lease for the new place. So I was like dusting off cobwebs off the table and like trying to put on a suit. Anyway, to make a long story short, when they visited me and they like checked out the location, they realized like, oh my God, this is legit. And they were so like, nice to me after that. I guess I felt bad for doubting. But now that, 10 years later, looking back, I'm thinking like, yeah, if a 24-year-old walked into my office, I'd be like, I don't know if you really have a business that you think you have. So.
right. I know for me, I think my original credit limit, and I went with a bank where I had my personal accounts too, because I was like, okay, they'll see that I've banked with them for a while. This will be great. And they gave me a credit limit of $500 at first. And I remember thinking, have you guys ever booked a flight or like booked a hotel? This isn't going to work. And so I would book a trip and then I would pay it off. And then I would book another trip and pay it off. I was paying off this credit card multiple times a day. And every single morning, I called the bank and I said, can you please increase the credit limit? Can you please increase it yet? And they started increasing it in like $250 increments. And I was like, this is crazy. And, but they were like, you have no credit history. You're 23 years old. And this business is a pretty risky idea, frankly. So
Right.
we're going to be pretty risk averse here, but eventually it worked out.
Eventually they trust you.
Persistence is key.
So tell me a little bit about the pandemic and how you guys have weathered the storm through that.
Oh, wow. It's been a crazy ride and we are still in it. Um, the best way I can describe it, and I realized this visual a couple weeks ago, and I'm really holding on to this comparison. Since March of 2020, it has felt like I am on a rocket ship that is going at full speed ahead, but one engine is broken. And so it's going in all different directions. And every day it feels like you are being pulled 100% in one direction. And the next day it completely goes the opposite direction. And you just have to roll with the punches and try your best to hang on and keep up with it.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I'll also say that this was the first real challenge that I faced in the business. Of course, there were little hurdles here and there, keeping up with demand, the good type of problems to have. But
Right.
this was the first real problem.
Right.
And so the first thing that we did was we had the whole team band together. It was an all hands on deck effort to cancel trips. We had a ton of trips already booked for the spring and summer of 2020, and we had to undo all of those reservations. We were all talking to travelers, we were all talking to hotels, airlines, everything. It was an all hands on deck effort. And then we sat down as a team and said, okay, what's next? We had been really fortunate that until that point we were always on this hamster wheel just trying to keep up and never had the time to invest in other ideas or growth opportunities because there was never enough space to do that. So once we canceled all of our trips, we sat down as a team and our director of marketing said, I would love for us to rebrand our traveler facing materials. And, I would love for us to audit our itineraries. And we all had all of these ideas. And so we just sort of created an internal to-do list and we got through a lot of huge projects, which was amazing. We also migrated our entire tech stack, which was no small feat. And in hindsight, I have no idea how we would have done that, during a regular busy summer season. But a huge silver lining was that we had the time and space to make those big systemic changes while we weren't dealing with the usual demands of a regular summer travel season. So we kept really busy behind the scenes. On the customer facing side of things, we launched 2 new types of trips. We had always offered trips where travelers could fly to their destination or do a road trip, but we launched staycations where you could be a tourist in your hometown. And we also launched outdoors trips So that would be a road trip to a glamping tent or a cabin or, a more
Right.
remote destination that was a little bit better for social distancing. So we had a lot of back end projects we worked on. We had a lot of customer facing growth opportunities. So it was busy. And then this spring, it really felt like the floodgates opened for us in late March, early April. And this was a really busy summer for us. So it was hard because I think, like most of the world, we were all pretty burnt out from the last year, like personally and
Totally.
professionally.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, all right, travel's back. We have to kick back into gear. And that was hard for me because I also felt burnt out. But I have been keeping an eye on our books, and financially it was a really, really hard and scary year.
Mm-hmm.
And I, for our team, of course, we were all in overdrive and working constantly all summer. But I still have this PTSD of, us hemorrhaging money over the last year. So that's been hard for me to balance, growth and rewarding the team for all the work that they're doing while still balancing the financial effects of the last year.
Yeah, I really appreciate and commend you for being so transparent about that, Lillian. I feel like there's so many people, and I'm in, many, many entrepreneur rooms day in and day out, and all you hear are like stories of folks who are like, oh yeah, we had like our best month yet in the pandemic. And it's like, that's not the story of most people. It has been, if it wasn't financially a tough time, it was mentally a tough time for everyone. And I just want to give some comfort to the women entrepreneurs out there who were like, I had a freaking horrific time during this pandemic, or just a bad time, or it was just a challenge that obviously nobody expected, and we needed to figure out how to survive.
And I think one other thing, just for anybody who's listening, something that often goes unsaid that I really felt this summer was anytime you hear about somebody who has their best month on record or, has this tremendous growth, what the undercurrent there, or the thing that's happening behind the scenes, is probably chaos and stress.
Yes.
Right? Like if you are having explosive growth, then that also means that you are trying to figure out how to scale customer service and working out all the kinks. And I felt like this summer, especially, yes, it was amazing. And I'm so glad and grateful that the company is still in business and that we were able to be this busy. But it was crazy. And, it felt like I was doing 3 jobs at once, basically, where I was helping. It was an all hands on deck summer as well, helping plan trips all day, while also thinking strategically, okay, the next time we're this busy, how do we make this easier? Because this isn't sustainable. So there's a lot of strategy. And part of that strategy was also, okay, we need to hire more people to fill all these roles. So then it was also a lot of interviewing and hiring and onboarding and HR. So just remember, if you're listening, when you hear about all of this success, remember that the thing that might not be being told is all the stress and work that's going on simultaneously.
Exactly. It is an individual journey for everyone, and you only get to see a slice of the story. So what has been your greatest win?
The fact that we're still in business.
Yes. We've all made it through. We have made it through.
Exactly. Yeah. Despite everything I just said about how hard it was, it feels pretty amazing that, as a bootstrapped small business, that we are still around today. And, when I started the company, my original business plan and projections estimated that I would plan 50 trips in the first year of business. And in the first year, we did over 550. And the next year we did 1,700, and the next year we did 3,500. And it still, to me, is just amazing that I had this crazy idea for a little travel company that would encourage people in the US to travel to an unknown destination in their country that they wouldn't think to visit on their own. And that it worked, and that people took the plunge, and that people trusted me enough to join my team. It all feels like a big win. I'm super cheesy with stuff like that, but
yes, how beautiful. Well, I would be remiss if I did not pick your brain about, even though I hate when people say pick your brain, but I'm sorry, I couldn't think of anything else to say. if I did not really like dig into how to plan for a vacation, because thankfully, we are kind of bouncing back from
Mhm.
this pandemic and from this experience. The travel industry has opened back up. Everyone's, starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. No shame on anyone whose business did not make it. It's okay. You can
Mhm.
keep going. You can pick up the pieces and keep going. And for those of us who struggled and are reopening our doors or who have had amazing months, this is all a new season that everyone's trying to figure out kind of where they fit. And I think that travel is that one thing that gives us all that breath of fresh air to know that, like, okay, vacations are back, and that will help me get some clarity on where to go next. So,
Yeah.
for people who are planning those vacations, what tips do you have for them to make sure that that experience is stress free?
Ooh, that is a great question. So the fun thing about travel is that there are always going to be things that are out of your control, right? Like you cannot sadly control the weather. You cannot control the airlines and any delays, things like that. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is shifting your mindset and and treat your vacation or put less emphasis on where you're going and the minute by minute experience and more who you're going with
Mm,
and embracing the fact that you have this time to yourself or with your partner or with your friends or with your family and and remember that that's why you're on the vacation. It's not to get the photo for social media. It is to spend time either with yourself or with someone you care about. And I think if you shift your mindset that way, it eliminates so much stress because
mm,
that way, if your flight is delayed or canceled, it makes it easier to roll with the punches. And you say,
yeah.
you know what? It's not ideal. I will get there when I get there. And in the meantime, I'll hang out at the bar at the airport and have a drink with this person I love because I still get to spend time with them.
Yes.
Um, so that's probably my biggest piece of advice.
Mm-hmm.
And we say the same thing to our travelers. So things are just going to be out of your control. Um, Another piece of advice is to look in places other than social media for inspiration.
Mm,
I think a lot of times, and I myself can be guilty of this too, I see experiences on social media and they look really enticing and the pictures are beautiful and the food looks amazing. And sort of like entrepreneurship, I think it's important to remember that you are only seeing a little sliver of reality. So
yeah.
when you are seeing, somebody standing in front of the Eiffel Tower or, in Antelope Canyon, what you're not seeing are the throngs of tourists behind them. You're not seeing the street vendors trying to sell tchotchkes. You're not seeing the full picture. And so the one thing that I love about surprise travel, and obviously I'm biased because it's my company, but I think when you try to recreate an experience that you see on social media, your expectations can be so high that the reality of the experience might not live up to that expectation. And and we see that one story I love to tell is that at Pack Up and Go, the destination that gets consistently incredibly high reviews from our travelers is Philadelphia.
Mm,
And I say it's the Philadelphia syndrome, and it's a great thing. It's because our travelers are signing up for a surprise vacation and they open their envelope and see they're going to Philly. And I'm from Pittsburgh, so I'm the first to, lean into this Pennsylvania rivalry. But their first reaction might be a little bit disappointing.
yeah.
And they might think, "Oh, Philly." But then they arrive in Philadelphia and they stay right in Rittenhouse Square and they can walk to these amazing museums and they can walk to all these amazing restaurants and the cobblestone streets are so charming and the architecture is beautiful. And and so having that open mind and sort of low expectations gives Philadelphia the opportunity to surprise and delight and exceed expectations. And
Yes.
so I think if you can go on a vacation totally open-minded without having a really clear visual of what you want to come out of it with, then you give the experience the chance to delight you.
I love that. And, I can relate to that so much too, because I do a lot of traveling overseas. One of my favorite places to go, everyone who listens to the show knows, is France. But
Hmm.
I do have to say that I have had some of the most impactful, powerful weekends of my life on staycations, staying in the
Hmm.
New York City area. Like you said, going to Philly, Rittenhouse Square is beautiful. The Jersey Shore, various
Hmm.
areas of New York City, not even in the city, but sometimes even like up in the Catskill Mountains. And so it's
Yeah.
those little things where you really feel like you're away from home, but not, that far away, that can allow you to unwind and relax and really like just let your creativity, free.
Totally. And even, I mean, if you are going on a big international trip, that's amazing also. And I feel like a lot of people who go on these bucket list trips, they're going to Paris. They say, yeah, no, the seeing the Eiffel Tower was cool. The Mona Lisa was pretty crowded. Oh, but I found this one cafe that was on this crazy side street, and I never would have found it unless this one local, told me to go down that street instead of this street.
Yes.
And it's all of the things that you're least expecting that end up being the highlight of your trip. And those are the things that when you hear someone else is going to Paris, you say, listen, you have to go to this one bakery.
Yeah.
And those are the things that you can't plan for necessarily, and you can't get stressed out about ahead of time because you have no expectation.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would love to know like what role your company plays in travel, because I have to be honest, a lot of our listeners and even myself, like when we're ready to book, we probably go on, Expedia or just go to straight through the airline and go to Travelocity and pick your top hotel or something like that. And
Mhm.
oftentimes it's hit or miss, So how does your company really change that experience for folks?
Yeah. So, what is the stat? It's the average trip takes between 15 and 25 hours to plan. And I am definitely guilty of that when I plan my own vacations, where, to your point, you pull up all the reviews of every hotel, you look into every, you compare all these different flights, and it comes down to, do I want a direct flight and spend $75 more? Or, you weigh all those different options. And at Pack Up and Go, we say it's the easiest and most exciting trip you'll ever take because it takes 15 minutes to sign up.
Mm.
So the way our trips work is our travelers tell us what types of trips they want to take. If you want to fly, drive, do a staycation, or an outdoors trip. And then you choose your travel dates and your budget, and you complete a pre-trip survey. So we want to know where you've traveled recently, what trips you have coming up, what you like to do on vacation, any celebrations, dietary restrictions, things like that. And then you're done. You get to sit back and relax. We have travel planners who, on an individual basis, read through every single pre trip survey, and they say, okay, if they love history and cocktails and live music, I think they would love New Orleans. Or if they're really into art museums and history and cultural sites, maybe it is Philly or Boston or DC. So we read through your preferences and choose it for you. We also, because we do this day in and day out, and we've planned thousands of trips at this point, we have preferred hotels in our destinations. So we have hotels that we trust based on our experience and our traveler feedback. So we're not going to put you in, a sketchy hotel on the side of the road. We're going to have you stay right in, in an awesome neighborhood, super walkable, central location. So we take the sort of decision paralysis out out of
Mm.
traveling,
Yeah.
and so we book it all for you, and then we put together our favorite recommendations for things to do in your destination. So the best sightseeing, restaurants. If you drink and you tell us you drink, we'll put together bars or breweries, things like that that we think you'll like based on that pre-trip survey. So when we send you off on your trip, you have a whole range of things to pick from. So you have a framework for exploring, but you can also have the space and freedom to explore on your own.
I love that. That sounds so easy. And when you were saying what you like, it's so interesting. I've never planned a trip that way, like gave myself some kind of survey and asked like, well, what do I really like to do? And started checking it off. Like
Yeah.
live music, love that. Never even thought about that when I travel. So that is brilliant, brilliant. Lillian, this has been so helpful sharing your story, your beautiful journey through launching your business, through building your business, the twists and turns. And I'd love to know if you could look back and give your 10-year younger self any piece of advice, what would it be?
I would tell myself 10 years ago, keep it up. Every single thing you do is a stepping stone towards your goals. I've always believed that what you put in, you'll get out. So, I would tell myself, keep it up. You're on the right track. Even if it feels really hard, just keep going.
Wow. And little did you know that you would be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar business. Well done, sister. Well done. How can our audience find and support you?
We are on social media at packupgo_travel, and our website is packupgo.com.
Packupgo.com, everybody. Pay her a visit. Lillian, thanks so much for coming on the show, and I can't wait to have you back.
So great talking with you.
You are listening to Lifestyle and Success with Dr. S, a talk show to help you rise in business success while designing a life that you don't need a vacation from. To subscribe to the show and never miss a beat, head to lifestyleandsuccesswithdrs.com.